I have Cybertruck commercial car number 1.
What?
I call my friend Kimball, who's Elon's brother, and he's one of my dear friends. Get me on the list or whatever. I walk into the Gigafactory, which is, by the way, the biggest building in the whole world. And they're like, Miss Agrawal, right this way. Elon's going to give his speech. Then you're going to walk up. We're going to give you the signal. Can you see that or not really?
Yeah.
That's Elon. There I am.
Nah. You have Cybertruck number 1. That is bonkers. That is crazy town. Welcome to the Let Me Save You 25 Years podcast, not just another interview podcast. Instead, we jump right into a new Shawnism each week. Each one is a lesson I've learned, usually the hard way, along the way, in hopes that you can maybe learn from my mistakes and build great things even bigger, better, faster than I ever did. These are simply true principles and useful tactics for success in life, not just business, unpacked in great depth by extremely successful people each week. My book, also called Let Me Save You 25 Years, where today's topic comes from, is intentionally really short. So think of this as the long version where I can go even deeper into topics. How cool is it to have a guest on today who has lived this Shawnism in her own way and brings so much more to the discussion than I ever can? Shawnism number 21, know yourself and know your purpose. I am way into Lovesac. This is around 2015, what is that? 18th year in business or something. And my business partner, I brought on this pro. His name's Jack Krause, great friend. I'm used to arguing with my key business partners. It's how we get to the bottom of things. It's how we get to better answers as we argue them out. And we're in the middle of one of these classic kind of bullheaded arguments about something, and Jack's frustrated and says, look, what is your design philosophy, Shawn? What is the philosophy you believe in? I can't answer him. And I'm so embarrassed that being this far into the business, I can't answer that question. Of course, there are lots of things about the Lovesac brand I can explain and I can speak to and like what we are and what we're not, but some kind of succinct answer. And so I go on this vision quest for months trying to find the answer to this question. We come up with this design philosophy for Lovesac that's called Designed for Life. Things that are built to last a lifetime and designed to evolve. This Designed for Life philosophy has completely changed the trajectory of this brand and my company. I can't think of anything now that's more influential on what we have become. Now you pair that, the combination of self-awareness, knowing yourself, and coming to know your purpose. And by the way, that took me years and years and years. I mean, I was nearly 2 decades in before we were practicing, a purpose-led path for Lovesac can lead you to outsized success way beyond just the typical, hey, we make this, we sell this, we make a buck. We document all these things, our purpose, our mission, our vision, our values, our guiding principles. Those are all different things. People kind of glom them up together in one meatball, like purpose, mission, vision, values. Those are all aspects of an organization and of a vision that must be understood and must be documented in what I call a strategic guide. We've been cooking on it for now more than a decade, and we've been through a lot of different iterations. And at this point, we're no longer operating with a machete. We're operating with a fine scalpel. We're making very slight changes each year as the company grows and morphs and changes. By building strategies that are informed by principles and purpose, it should never be surprising when you naturally end up where the puck is going, because usually things founded on good principles end up in good places. That age-old adage, skate where the puck is going. You want to get there? Tap into some core fundamental values, principles, and define a purpose, not just for your organization, but finally for you. I've used the same strategic framework. I call it the 12 W's framework. It's my own, to identify my own core principles and values and my own purpose. I'm like a broken record now at Lovesac. It always comes back to, every conversation now comes back to grounding the answers in some of those items found in our strategic guide. So we'll get into this in greater depth, but this idea, know yourself and know your purpose, runs deep, and I look forward to unpacking it with our guest today. think of all the things you don't typically discuss at the dinner table, and our guest today is likely building a business out of it. If not, she's probably writing another best-selling book or blog post or away on some exotic speaking event / DJ gig, or just being a great mom to her sweet son. Named one of the most creative people by Fast Company and called out for some of its best new inventions. Author of 2 best-selling books, Do Cool Shit and Disrupt Her, which is on my shelf right here. And unlike me, an actual serial entrepreneur, founder of Tushy, Thinks, and probably a couple other companies since we last spoke. We welcome to the pod, Miki Agrawal.
Let's go. Here I am. Here you are.
Miki. So
Shawn.
thankful to be with you. This is going to be good. We our topic today from Let Me Save You 25 Years, know yourself and know your purpose. And after I had met you, I kind of had you pegged for this one. So
Love
I
that.
just feel like you've been a very purpose-led individual. Forget business, purpose-led businesses, which is a fact, but you strike, you just are. And so I'm excited to get into this with you.
Same. Let's go.
All right. So when you first heard this without any prep, know yourself, know your purpose. What's the first thing that came to mind, Miki?
I mean, I think just like being yourself is just being authentically you and not trying to sugarcoat or trying to ask yourself, I wonder what the other person wants me to say, versus just sharing your deepest truth from your guts, from your heart, from you, versus like trying to, we live in a world where everyone's trying to position things in ways that feel good to the other, but it actually does a disservice because you're not actually telling the truth. And I think like truth is love, love is truth. And I think the only way in is by being fully authentic, because you can tell when someone's not being who they are. And that just makes it uncomfortable versus when someone is who they are. And then you're like, oh, I feel like I know you.
I think that for a lot of people that can be really hard. Like, I don't know why, and you've just thrown a bunch of words and like, I don't know, phrases that a lot of people sometimes dismiss as like new agey. And I don't know, man, like, it's easy for people to kind of
be authentic, but it's like actually, yeah, in the right way. Right.
So how do you think you've always, that's come naturally to you, or have you had to, I don't know, do some work, or as you've obviously been exposed to a lot of great ideas and concepts and people, to kind of get comfortable enough to really be that way? Like, how have you come to this understanding?
It's so funny because I'm literally about to like do a little post about this. I did, anyways. You'll see it on Instagram at some point. But I think I got very lucky in that, and I think we're all lucky in that way. But I got lucky. I'm just talking about my own story. Is like I grew up with a Japanese mother, an Indian father from India. I grew up in French Montreal, Canada, and I moved to the United States. And so and I grew up in a very multicultural town. My next door neighbors were Chinese or French or Indian, or, wore hijab from Pakistan. And, just like our best friends were Portuguese, so we went to all the Portuguese things. So we just literally we went to Cotillion, we'd like a Filipino friends. So just like, we were just exposed to so many different perspectives that I think oftentimes when you grow up in a silo, or like, this is the way it is, you're not given a lot of room to argue versus, saying like, hey, like, I wonder if that's just one perspective. Like maybe there are multiple perspectives. Like, oh, that's what you feel, and that's what you feel, and that's what you feel. And none of them are wrong. They're just coming from different perspectives. And so I think I just learned at an early age that like being yourself isn't being in an echo chamber. Being yourself is like arguing your perspective, and it being totally okay to do that. And I think that's why like people say like build companies that are diverse, like build companies that are, that aren't just an echo chamber of one type of person, because it does create just a kind of a one type of thing versus like, like the color of, the colors and the textures and like the energies of different people coming together from totally different walks of life, where it becomes like a melange of like it's like a mosaic versus a melting
Mm.
pot. It's like a
Mm.
mosaic. It's like all these different colors and different types of people. It creates this like beautiful textured, colorful thing versus like a bland one perspective thing. So
Mm.
I think having different perspectives is actually like beautiful and heart led. And I don't think
It's
I think
interesting.
we were taught that. Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting that you go there immediately from the diving board of know yourself and know your purpose. And what I interpret is first being really honest with yourself about who you are, who you're not, where you come from, what you believe, because I think there's a lot of editing going on right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel it. I feel the need to edit in
I
my
mean,
life.
I'm sure, especially as like a white male, handsome, who's successful, and you're just like, I'm going to get taken down if I say shit a certain way. Trust
Look,
me,
man, I just have a big target on my back.
I
Like,
know. I'm a woman of color and I'm treated like a white male because I'm successful. It's weird. And so it doesn't even,
hmm,
there comes a point where it doesn't matter when you hit a level of success, which is interesting,
hmm.
you know.
Well, I also think I love that you took it to, I can't believe you brought up the word argue as a couple times, like in response to where this led. And I think it's really brilliant because in fact, it's in this chapter of my book. In this very chapter, it opens with me arguing with my business partner because I'm kind of like, that's how I always got to truth. Like, it's not that I'm trying to win. It's not that I'm trying to convince you necessarily. I will convince you unless you can
Makes
convince me
me better.
back. And
Yeah.
that's where you get to honesty, right?
And that's where you get may the best idea win, may the best
Yeah.
argument win, or may we tessellate in a way that it's like, it feels like, oh yeah, that and that together makes that, which is even better than each separate. Totally.
Yeah, I think that's really intuitive of you, and I think it's like a skill that's been lost because everyone's dunking on each other. That happens all day on social media. It happens in the news now, like in the all these pundits. But in terms of like a true healthy argument, like, hey, we're like, I don't agree with you at all. Like, but let's talk this out. I just don't think there's enough of that happening. I just think there's a ton of dunking and sound biting. And ultimately, I think it's interesting for me to reflect on how that brought me to our purpose at Lovesac, which was rooted in this concept designed for life, because my partner finally was so sick of arguing with me over every detail that he's like, okay, well, what's your design philosophy, Shawn? Like, what is it that you believe in so intently that we can wrap this whole brand around it so we can stop arguing about all these tactics? And that sent me to the woodshed and helped me kind of tease this out. And since then, since we've stated our purpose at Lovesac, I mean, which is, by the way, to inspire humankind to buy better stuff so they can buy less stuff, which is not intuitive for a company that makes stuff to say that, right? But since we've done that and tied it to this design philosophy, man, Lovesac has had nothing but success. Like a decade now of almost 40% growth for as a public company. Like, it's been wild. And so I really do attribute a lot of that to identifying a purpose, but not like in a new agey cheesy way, I don't think, but in a way that's actually useful. And if you found that, I mean, the companies that you founded have all been purpose led, I believe, been purpose driven. And I mean, were you intent about that from the beginning? Because I wasn't at Lovesac. We were just trying to make beanbags and survive. But you actually have, and you continue to found companies that are kind of wrapped around a purpose. How has that been useful to you?
Um, I just think I wouldn't have cared as much about the companies after a little bit if there wasn't a purpose behind it. I think,
Yeah.
sometimes you're like, I'm going to start another t-shirt company. And then it's like with the, cat emoji on the front because it's like really cool right now and it's trending on TikTok or whatever. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like after like literally like a month of doing that, if there's no purpose behind the thing, you are going to just lose interest in it versus being like, hey, like I really believe that, for example, my first business was born out of stomach aches. I started, New York City's first gluten-free farm-to-table pizza concept called Wild. We're still open 19 years later. It's our 19th year in business, which is so crazy. And the purpose of it was to create the alternative to everyone's favorite comfort food, made with, you know, gluten-free flours, hormone-free cheeses, local seasonal toppings, like supporting local farms, creating local jobs. And that really gave me purpose to create an alternative version to an otherwise like fast food that, you know, was still delicious, but made people feel kind of bloated and horrible afterwards. And then cut to my next company, Thinks, you know, is really born out of having my own period problems every month. But I also saw that it was a huge taboo globally that people couldn't talk about it. They were putting their little pads and tampons in their sleeve and slinking off to the bathroom. Meanwhile, it's the thing that creates human life. A woman's period is what creates human life. And there's this deep shame around it, which then prevented girls and women from going to school, going to work in the developing world. There's parts of the developing world that consider that time of the month a time of like, you know, like you're hit by the devil, you know, just crazy things like that. And when girls were staying home and missing school, it was really affecting like the overall communities globally, you know, globally. And so it was like, oh my God, can we solve my own problem and solve a problem for people in the developing world? The answer is of course. And that fueled me, like going to Uganda and seeing these girls wearing our pads that we partnered with, you know, and being so happy was just like fuel, you know. And same thing, next came Tushy, my, you know, current project, which is bringing bidets to America, which is supporting, elevating people on the planet. That's been my mission statement across all of my companies, elevating people and the planet, and which seems pretty broad, but you know, they do actually. I'll do that. And so for Tushy, it's bringing bidets. It's actually a precise shower for your butt. It's not some, you know, wiping with trees. You know, right now 15 million trees are getting cut down every year for toilet paper consumption. It's really bad for the environment, and it's not clean. You're just literally taking dry paper and smearing it around. It makes no sense. And so, you know, to bring a modern bidet that attaches to your existing toilet, it's under $100. It's so seamless. It takes 10 minutes to install. It's just clean. It's easy. It's not pulling from the water or your tank. It's pulling from the, you know, your wall, you know, so like, it's just super clean, simple. And we have now helped save over 10 million trees from getting flushed down the toilet. We have funded the build out of, you know, of clean toilets for 60,000 families in India. We've funded tons of resoiling and reforestry projects all over South America. So like, these are like things that beyond like, we're like cleaning your butt, which is awesome for you, elevating people, but we're also really supporting something bigger than ourselves, which is, you know, ultimately really important. So I think across the board, without that purpose, it would just be like another thing that I'm selling, which is just like, meh.
Yeah, I love that. You know, you could read any entrepreneur story and come to the conclusion like, oh man, it's hard. It's just like freaking hard. And I hadn't really necessarily thought of it that way. I love how you put it, that, you know, having a purpose that you're really clear on, something you're actually trying to achieve way beyond just selling bidets or selling, you know, underwear or whatever it might be.
Just keeps you
gives
going.
you that power. Yeah. It gives you that power to charge through, even though you might have it through economic pressure. Hey, I'm in debt. I got to survive. I got to pay the bills. How much more powerful is it instead of, you know, just the negative pressure of, let's say, debt or what have you, to the positive pressure of being driven to like solve a problem in this world, big or small.
Yeah. I always say that when you're like dealing with supply chain issues or employee relation dynamics, or you're dealing with customer issues, you're dealing with website malfunction, you're dealing with all kinds of things, it really does really does get you through, and you're like, all right, we are helping, you know, like all these people in India, we're helping all these, like we're saving trees, like there's like we're able to like use that as like a inspiration life raft when things are really, really hard on the business front, where you're like, wow, just like you said, this shit is hard. And,
Mm-hmm.
that stuff is, like I said, an inspiration life raft. It makes a big difference, huge difference for our own like morale.
Yeah. I think that's really a cool insight, that the purpose is for the morale, not maybe not even just of the leader, but of the entire, body of the organization, people who work there. That it's hard. By the way, life's just hard, right? Like we're all
Yeah.
waking up trying to keep up with our kids. So having something that you can believe in and really feel good about waking up and spending your time away from the
Yeah.
people who you really love sometimes in order to achieve something is a lot more powerful when it's driven on by purpose. So my question is, let's first go one level down, as it were. Like, how would you think about for a founder or a leader, any kind of leader in an organization that maybe isn't purpose led? They've like I said, like with Lovesac, we're trying to pay the bills for a long time, and then thankfully we teased out this really meaningful and authentic, truly authentic purpose that was always there, but we had to like really go to the woodshed and it was our customers who showed us, like they were living so happily with their products for decades that we realized, oh, it's because we made
Well
that
made.
thing to
Well
be
made.
built to last a lifetime, designed to evolve, right? And then it's like, wow, we can wrap the whole company around that. But how would you give advice to like someone who hasn't identified a meaningful purpose? They fell into making cat t-shirts because it was a good business. And
Right.
then what would you say to those people?
That yeah, identify a real problem in the world, a real need on the planet, a real need with people, and that you're seeing, whether it's loneliness, isolation, whether it's, wastefulness, whether it's, um, girls and women being disadvantaged. You can literally go to the United Nations Millennial Development Goals if you don't
Mm-hmm.
understand what a purpose, where you can like start to hang your hat of your company on, and then you can actually look and see what are the goals of the United Nations from a what we need to support and work on as a world, people, and then pick one of those things, because then they'll be like, it'll
Mm-hmm.
be relevant, it'll be purposeful, it'll speak to you because there's a bunch of them, and the MDGs, like the Millennial Development Goals, are real problems that need to be solved. And so I think like when you're working on a company that's just driven by money and finance, to hang your hat on something like you said, like for us, like, oh, being a really, really well made product, very similar to Patagonia's concept, where it's like,
Yeah.
do you really need this jacket before you buy it? Like, let me do one more pop up and say, do you really need it? And if
Yeah.
your answer is yes, then you will keep letting you buy this jacket. But do you really need it? And that actually spoke to so many people in sustainability space who felt like, wow, like you care so much about us that you're willing to sacrifice this sale, which I don't know, is it marketing tactic? Is it, but I believe that they actually
Yeah.
believe it. Like I believe that's their ethos, and that was from day one, the way they believed. And so there's also something to be said about using it for marketing, like good
Yeah.
for marketing, and you can tell whether it's authentic or not. That's what you said. You're like, we really sat with ourselves to figure out, like, does this really feel true to us? And it's like, oh wow, like our customers even told us like this is a lifelong
Yeah.
thing, and we're like, oh, we made a well-made product actually for that. We just never really put that out there, and now that's true. So that feels good. But a lot of companies are like, I'm just going to throw on this thing and just talk about that thing, and it just feels really unauthentic. Versus
Yeah.
my belief is no business should start unless they're a social enterprise, like unless they actually think about what their give back could be, what their purpose could be, because employees will be like meh, or customers will be like meh, or like over time they're just going to look for other competitors that are cheaper than whatever, versus like, wow, like from day one these companies believe in that, or this company's been around for a long time and they're a trusted brand, and now they have this like epic purpose that's behind them, like I trust them even more. That's beautiful too. So
Yeah.
um yeah,
I,
it just can't be like, people don't even know at who buy Tushy that we have funded clean latrines, the build out of toilets for 60,000 families. People have no idea that we fund, all these resoiling and reforestry projects around South America, because we could put that forward, which I'd like for people to start to know that, but like, that's not the why you buy it. You're going to buy it because you want to elevate your own experience and stop wasting toilet paper and trees, whatever, for yourself. And oh, by
Yeah.
the way, your dollars are also helping a bunch of things as well on top of that. And that's oh, by the way, if you even learn about it, if you go to page 4 of our website and find out about it, but like, you won't find it unless you're deep
Yeah.
entrenched into our website. But in the
Yeah.
forefront, you won't see it anywhere. And I find that to be more authentic to me, but that's,
Yeah, I found it's so cool hearing you say this, because you've, I think, come to these tactics and conclusions and ways of behavior naturally, and they're very similar to what I've experienced. So at Lovesac, so first of all, this Sactional piece I'm sitting on is 16 years old. It's wearing its 10th set of covers. That's the cool thing, right? It's not just well built, it was designed to evolve. If I couldn't change colors, fabrics, whatever, then I would have already tossed it because it wouldn't work in my space, right?
right.
So we've designed that into the product. But what's cool is we celebrate. Like, essentially, I've said to investors, like, we'll never be the size of Apple, because we're not convincing you to buy the same product every other year. Like, we want you to hang on to these things forever. Now, we'll get pretty big, and we have gotten pretty big. But what's crazy is how it's dragged along with it, like this behavior, and really committing to this idea that, hey, we want people to buy better so they'll buy less, has not only sold more stuff for us ultimately, because it just opens the aperture to more people. And by the way, there's a lot of people out there, and these markets are massive, but it's forced us to be more and more and more honest. And we love it. Like, we'll embrace the honesty. And when people are like, no, you really, like, then how are you going to make money if like, I'm going to use this thing for, and it's like, don't worry about that. Like, and we become more honest. And by the way, like, most people don't even know, just like you, that all of our new products are made out of 100% recycled plastic bottles. The fabric, that is, we recycle millions of bottles. We barely lead with that. But as you know, there's companies that's their whole shtick, right? Like, oh, it's made from recycled bottles. We do that too. We probably recycle more plastic than all those t-shirt and shoe companies combined, because our stuff's so big and our scale's big.
Right.
We barely tell the story, because that's not why you're buying it. Like, and so the other point I wanted to tease out from what you said is self-interest. Like, I love that you've identified that you need to not just tout some great purpose and like, let's all sing Kumbaya and like celebrate the earth, whatever. You have to make it align with human beings' self-interest, whatever it is, so that they'll want it, so that they'll participate, so that ultimately it drives the whole machine forward.
Right. It's true, because like, it's people, fortunately and unfortunately, buy for self-interest. Like, they're not necessarily being like, oh, like, that's what nonprofits are. Like, make a donation to this or that, which is, people do. Obviously, there's donation. The world of, that world is nonprofit is billions of dollars too. But when you're buying something, you're not necessarily buying it because you're like helping someone. You're buying because you want that cool looking shoe that's a slip on, that's very like Brazilian looking, and it's different. Oh, by the way, every shoe you buy gives someone a need. That's cool. But like, I'm buying it because it looks cool, let's be honest. And it feels good on my foot, and it feels really comfy, and I like it. Same thing with Lovesac. I'm sure people are like, oh wow, it feels comfy when I lay on it. I could just like squish into it, and it's like, it fits into my body, and like, it's great, versus like, I'm buying because like, oh, it's saving the planet, or it's really good to people. Like, so that's why we learned that too which is what's interesting for my next company, which I'm starting a plastic eating, product company. And it's going to be interesting, because we're going to really see if people care about the planet. So ultimately, like, our products have to be the highest performing, no matter what, in the category. So it still has to perform for the task that it's meant to perform. And oh, by the way, it's eating plastic, and it's like saving the planet. That's the second thing.
Yeah.
But the first thing needs to be like, hey, it does
really
the
good.
job. It does it really fucking well. But there's not too much of the actual innovation in the product itself, but it's what happens after, like the product is off, off the baby, for example. We're doing our first product's a diaper, but it's like, it's really, really interesting to feel into how we're going to tell that story in a way that compels people And I believe that it has to be a performance story first, and then the
Yeah.
sustainability story second.
Yeah, well, you're obviously really smart to do it that way, and I'm guessing that it's not only your intuition as a great founder entrepreneur, but research has told you that as well with customers. That's what we've learned. Like people, in the end, they say they care, but they don't really care.
Yeah.
And there's
Is it
things that
cheap?
people
Is
say.
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, there's things that people say, but what you have to watch is what they do. Where do they actually spend their money?
Totally.
And I think marketing has gone down some well-meaning but crooked paths when people kind of put that story first. And look, it's great. I mean, it's elevated everyone's like knowledge of water bottles and plastic bottles, and that's great. But it's come at the expense of a lot of organizations that don't make any money because in the end, they haven't aligned their product with just pure self-interest. And so it's a magic and it's an art. And I love that. So on the one level, you said a business shouldn't be founded that's not purpose-led and solving a real problem anymore. And I think that's really interesting because that's kind of a new movement. Like this whole, we're a purpose-led organization. That's like a new movement, honestly. I mean, not totally. There's obviously been purpose-led
Yeah.
organizations, but it's very
I
hip.
feel you. I feel you.
And I think, by the way, I think it's really brilliant because that option is there now, and it's almost like becoming an expectation. So so there's like the new business formation that you have a chance to do what you're doing, eating plastic, building products around it, aligning with self-interest, making it profitable and good for the world, all those great things. If you're stuck in a business that is just a business you need to be in because you're there, I believe that you can pivot to align it with some great purpose. I love the tactic you gave, like go to the UN website, find a purpose. And even if it's just, hey, we're going to donate to this or we're going to plant some
Yeah.
trees, oh, that's good. But then let's go one more level. If I'm not a founder, not an entrepreneur, I'm part of an organization that isn't purpose led. How what should I do? How can I make a difference? How should I be thinking about this idea of purpose?
As an employee or
Yeah,
as the founder?
as an employee, like what advice would you give to, because there's more employees than there are founders
For
and,
sure.
and
I would
CEOs.
then I would come up with an amazing purpose for the company and present it to the leader. Because as a leader, if one of my employees presented me with something that's like a compelling argument as to why having this give back will actually support the business growth and people caring and people sharing it, I'd be like, thank you for
Mhm.
thinking for the business and thank you for taking this initiative to present something that could be better for the company, better for the people, better for the planet. But I mean, like, yes, 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 thank you. Like, I'm so busy, bogged down, thinking about, like you said, the next quarter, whatever, that, oh my God, I didn't even pick my head up out of the sand to be like, let me look at that. And that could actually support the business. Like, let's maybe tell me why you think that way. Well, the Gen Zers, as this poll has shown, shows that people care more about working for, buying products from companies that do have some kind of a give back. And so like we're talking 50% of whatever, maybe it's a poll, maybe people are just saying that because it's in a poll, but I say we at least test the hypothesis and see if we do a little give back to something, create a landing page, figure it out. Maybe it'll work. Let's try it. As a leader, I'd be like, how do I promote you?
Love it.
And so it's that, like, most employees oftentimes just clock in, clock out. For those who really are like thinking for the business, I think I share that with my teams all the time. It's like, if you can think for the business, like, how can we get us to, like, really getting every household in America to adopt a bidet? Like,
Yeah.
for us to like become the next toothpaste or toothbrush for a household, like, if you can help us really crack the code on that and come up with creative ideas, I don't care what department you're in. Like, we are all ears here at the leadership. So like, let's figure out how to do that. Or if you're like, you know what? The meta marketing is just siphoning so much cash from you. I think you should take that cash and put it towards podcasts or put it towards, and here are data to back it. And I'd love to lead that thing. Wow. Thank you. I appreciate you, versus it being like, let me tell you from leadership what to do and you just go execute. Like, so yeah, I think it would be so, so, so cool for a teammate, an employee, to be able to come forward and present.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. It'd be so
That's
fun.
amazing. I try to be just really available, right? I DM with customers and employees like every day on Instagram who share all kinds of ideas for my business. And look, a lot of them obviously are already in the ether floating around, but every now and then, man, it's amazing the wealth of wisdom you can get from just an onlooker, someone who cares, someone who's thinking on your behalf or with you or for you. And I love that you are open to tapping in. And I think you represent to me a really evolved leader, a really evolved person, right? So my question back to this whole topic of know yourself and know your purpose. Did you need to do work to come to become did you need to do work to become such an authentic kind of intuitive person? Was that natural to you? And if so, or if not, what would you recommend to people who really need to know themselves? Because you've observed other leaders who, frankly, are super successful, maybe, but inauthentic or not, any kind of purpose driven. What would you recommend to people trying to come to know themselves in the way that I think we both understand naturally?
Hmm. I mean,
Like, have you
I've done
been that?
I've done a decade of coaching of somatic therapy, trauma therapy. I mean, I went through at my last company deep trauma, like crazy shit were said about me. Like, and I just was like, and and I also think that that made me look at myself deeply on like what I care about, what matters, and and being okay to do the work and not making it feel like that's weak. And now coaching is cool. Like everyone's got a leadership coach or a performance coach or things like that. But like having a life leadership freedom coach, like I've had somatic therapists. I've had, I did, like lots of different types of modalities of coaching and therapy to really clear myself of some of the trauma from that experience, but then also
Wow.
like really look at my blind spots as a leader and to understand like where my effusive firepower works well and where my effusive firepower doesn't work well.
Mm,
And I know that like I can, like I'm super like excited about things and people feel so like backed by me. But then when I, can be intensely like, about an idea or something, then it could, it could have come off as like super intense and like steamrolly or something like that. And I really was able to witness, or I'm able to catch myself in those moments of like, okay, like rein it in, like bring your voice down, like take a breath, like relax. Like
interesting.
no one's, this is not like you're not performing surgery on anyone, and like, so
I, I want
they're
to double. I want to double click on that for 1 second because I think that sometimes, like when I perceive someone like you who just seems like so in flow state, you've done this, that, the other, you seem to really have a lot going, working in your favor. You seem to have a lot of natural ability, but you've done work. Like you've focused on yourself and paid attention, and you're listening, and you're editing in hopefully a productive way. But so I think those two things can come at odds. So like people, I think on the one hand, when we think of editing and we think of like trying to be a different, a better, a more evolved person, well, then how can you be authentic? Like, aren't I just being myself? Like, I think there's a lot of like, just be
right.
yourself, but it's
It,
not just be
that's
yourself. How do you reconcile that?
that's such a great thing to the question, because I would fight so hard with um, my husband about um, the concept of, for example, like nonviolent communication, right?
Mm,
NVC. So nonviolent communication is a construct. It's basically a construct that goes something like this. When you, so say Shawn, you said something that was like, you didn't intend to, but you said something that came off bad and it triggered me. And then so I'll say, Shawn, when you said that, I felt sad, hurt. I need to feel open. So it's like when you X, I feel Y, my need is, and then my request is. So my need is, I just need to feel open in that moment. I needed to feel like, like just loved on and, taken care of in that moment. And so my request is next time you say an offering of a suggestion, that it comes with a softer tone or something like that. Do you know what I mean? So like this way, it's like, it's not like you did something wrong. It's like, but when you said this thing, very specific thing, I felt this, my need is this, and my request is this. So it's a very specific construct for nonviolent communication that it's like, well, I'm not a violent communicator, but it's like, because it's such a, it's a double clicky, it's basically the name of a book, and he always wanted to create a clickbait headline. And so like nonviolent communication is like, but that's why I was very opposed to it. Cause I'm like, I'm not a violent person. Like violent is when someone beats you up, but you can be verbally like really contracted by the way someone is. And so like, I know from my experience growing with an Indian father that I have a very high tolerance for kind of like a whiplashy, like type of person where someone's like yelling at me and the next minute they're like loving on me. The next minute they're yelling at me. And the next minute they're loving on me. And I'm able to like get over things quickly. Whereas a lot of people aren't like that. And I assumed that people were just like that, like me. And that wasn't the case. And so for me to like, when I'm like intense and then like loving and then intense, it creates a whiplash. And I get that. And so I was able to like see that and observe that and not change my effervescence and my like excitement for the exciting part, the good parts, but then the intense hard parts, you can not edit it where you're like not yourself, but you have language that you can still say what you want to say, but not from a place of like, feels like an attack, like a place that feels more like, hey, like I felt this and I'm still like, I'm not perfect. I'm still working on that. Like it's still moments where I have to come back and, relationships, as we all know, is like rupture, repair, rupture, repair, rupture, repair, rupture, repair. Like that is the nature of relationships. And the game is how fast can you repair? Like that's the game. It's like, oh, I said something instead of being like, well, you said it this way, so therefore I'm just going to sit here and sulk until you versus like, hey, like I said a thing, I fucked up, like I'm sorry. Almost the game is like the leader between the ruptures. The leader is actually the person who repairs first. So actually like who seeks to repair first actually wins that game. You know what I mean? And so wins that play. So it's like, oh, if both of us kind of said something that triggered each other, we're now in a trigger dance because we didn't mean it, but like this thing triggered this person and this person triggered. So now it's like, who said what? We don't remember, but we're both triggered. And so instead it's like the game is who is going to be bigger than who's going to be big enough to just be like, hey, let me say I'm sorry. And then the other person's like, me too, I'm sorry too. Like, but it's usually the ego that prevents us to saying sorry first. And so my practice, which is against my usual old way of being, which is what my natural way of being, which was like harumph, actually is better for me in the end, which is to be like, hey, I'm sorry. I was feeling this and I my guard went up and I barked and I didn't mean to. I'll do better next time. Then it's just like, it's like, I want to repair as fast as possible. I don't want to stay in the trigger dance. Like no one likes that. So it's such an egoic thing that like, that's where after having gone through the crazy shit I went through my last company, I learned like the game of egos is just such a like lose game. It's like, how fast can you get back to vulnerability? Like vulnerability is power. It's like, ugh, like I was feeling this and I said it this way. I didn't mean it. I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's it. Like,
I think I think everything you just shared, I appreciate your vulnerability and honesty. And there's not enough time on this podcast or any podcast to go deep enough to really solve problems because they're multi-layered and they're different for every individual and lived experience. And so this is what I take away from listening to you, if I may, is you are not accidental about this. Like, you're not accidental about your behavior, your self-awareness. It doesn't just happen like, oh, I'm Miki Agrawal. I'm really intuitive. I'm really like tapped in. You are reading, you are studying, you've enlisted therapy and coaches, you're paying attention, you're vulnerable, you're making mistakes, and that's why I say, I believe the root of success, like at the root of all of it, all these things, all these principles, I got my 25 Shawnisms, whatever, and then there's 25 more. We could keep going. The root of all of it, self-awareness. Now, it's hard to get self-aware because that itself requires a lot of different tactics and methodologies, some of which you've even teased out. But that's my point of view, is like, and that requires flipping honesty. Self-awareness requires that you're at least honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And even if you're behaving badly, I've behaved badly even as I knew I was behaving badly, but at least I knew I was behaving badly. And when I say that, I mean like, I can mean a lot of things. Like you said, just an interaction, just the way that I said something. And we know, if we're really honest, we know, but sometimes I think people dull themselves to a point where they know deep down, but they have created so many layers of defenses that they won't admit it, and they can't admit it, and they need to peel those away. And that requires therapy and coaching and 360s and all those other things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, it's like there's so much fear around looking at our own blind spots or getting like a 360 survey from our employees. Like I used to be so terrified of them because my fragile ego was like, oh, but now it's like, I like want the feedback. Like I want feedback. I want you to tell me like what you're seeing. And like, I don't have to take it all in as truth, but I'd like to know your perspective. I'm not going to like crumble. But it's like knowing I've now worked 10 years enough to get enough feedback and critique from coaches and therapists, and that it's no longer like I've built up enough of like padding under my foot to like walk on rocks. It's like when you walk bare feet, you're able to like, versus at first you're like, ow, 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 ow. But then like you do it enough, you have callus, you're like more callous, not saying you're harder, you just can't, still you. So for me, I feel like I've received enough feedback over the years, over and over and over again, that now it's less painful it's not pain. It's just more like, like, tell me more. Like I want more feedback. Like I want you to tell me more. And I think a lot of people are really afraid to look at their blind spots.
Yeah.
Like, really, really afraid.
And a lot of people are afraid to give it because they've had so many bad experiences. And so, by the way, just eliciting it, not just in a formal method like a 360, which is a fantastic tool. If you don't know what that is out there, it's, you get feedback from all the people around you, people above you, below you, to the side, sometimes even extending into your family or friends. And it's useful for sure. But on a daily basis, I've tried to be very overt, teach the people around me to be like brutally honest with me when they can be. And it doesn't always work because, some of them are my employees and like,
it also comes out wrong and then you feel bad. And sometimes I'm clunky with how it comes out and then you feel bad. And it's just like, it's hard. It's hard.
But I will say that it starts with the intent. Like if your intent is to become more self-aware, become more thoughtful, what's ironic is all of this editing in this way, all of this modification, self-improvement, whatever, has put, in my experience, every time I make efforts in that realm, I become more comfortable. Even with all the criticism, I become more comfortable with myself. I become more comfortable just in the end than being who I am. And part of it is because I learned to modify my behavior so that some of these rough spots, blind spots, whatever, become more refined. And then I can be prouder of who I am and how I behave. And that becomes natural. And so it's not just, oh, that's just who I am. I think like that is the great excuse. That's just my truth. That's who I am. Well, like none of us are good enough. And I mean that really sincerely. Like we all have room to just be a little better.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. And yeah, it's like that fine line between like the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset, but then also like, the feeling of like I'm doing well. And then I like And then it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's like, I want the step back so I can see, assess, and then take 2 steps forward. And then, it's people, we were taught like forward or bust, or like, or we're failed or whatever. And the 1 step back is always really, really, really the most insightful stuff. Yeah.
Well, we could go all day, Miki, but
Yeah.
I'm just really grateful for your honesty and your vulnerability. That's the root. I mean, the fact that you're willing to even, go some of these places on this podcast is emblematic of why you've been successful. And that's really what I'm getting at, and so, if I can summarize a few things you've said that I loved, seek out those arguments in hopefully a nonviolent way, a useful, productive way. Don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid to speak your mind, seek out diversity around you, in your organizations and stuff. I love what you said to people, thinking for your organization, get to a purpose. If you don't have one, Lovesac transparently was not founded with any kind of purpose, but we've evolved into a beautiful one that drives us. Don't be afraid of therapy and coaches and books and feedback. I mean, full of wisdom and grace and beauty. Thank you so much. You can follow Miki, as I do, at Miki Agrawal. That's Agrawal, following Miki. I should do it. That's at Miki Agrawal on Instagram, or on X, Twin Miki. Definitely check out either of her books, Disrupt Her, Do Cool Shit. Miki has endless interviews and content out there on YouTube with a lot to say about innovation and design. Please don't forget to subscribe to this podcast or video. Please give it a star rating. Every bit makes a huge difference. I got no advertisers, just putting it out there for the good of the world. Please share it out. Social media, help someone save a chunk off their 25-year journey, because you're just that good of a friend. Thank you so much to the eminence of innovation, the dean of disruption, a true champion of women in business everywhere. Thank you so much to Miki Agrawal. Amazing.
Yay. We did it.
All right. And to everyone out there, come to know yourself first and know your purpose. It just might save you 25 years.